Welcome to On Top of the Covers, a weekly podcast by Orlove, dedicated to all of you guys, the creative visionaries, the entrepreneurs and artists and makers and disruptors around the world, really carving your own way, especially as it relates to the culture of music. And that's exactly what we discuss here. We talk about what's happening. We feature inspirational stories of people contributing to the culture of music. We talk about how they did it, or they are doing it, I should say, because it's really happening as we speak, and how they're doing it creatively and artistically and personally and professionally. I'm Matt Gottesman, your host and director of the Orlove brands. You guys can reach out to me at Matt Gottesman on Instagram. Guys, I answer each and every single text, DM, reply, response for the last decade. So, feel free to reach out. And as we always say, and you probably hear in the intro, is that, music really is one of our biggest connectors in the world. It's a common bond where we all can relate to it. We're all bonded to it in some way. And so we want to open up those conversations about the art and its contributors, their missions, and how they're contributing to this culture. And of course, we don't believe in conventional ways of doing things. And so we feature unconventional ways and different paths to that success. And we've got another incredible guest today, Nico Perez, who's the co-founder and CEO of Mixcloud. And I'm sure to our entire audience, there's not one person who doesn't know what Mixcloud is, but we're going to still talk about it today, its inception and how they got to where they're at now and what their plans are for the future. And we're really going to be talking about this rise of audio culture and creator culture, which you guys know I love talking about. I continue to press forward, whether it's been for the last so many years, but now as we live through this very transitional time with what technology is allowing us to do in creating communities and in creating more creative ownership and our distribution and how we interact with the people that consume our products and our services and our music and our art. And, now you're probably seeing the hype with everything else with NFTs and blockchain. The possibilities have really become limitless. And so with that, I'm going to cue up Nico's background. We're going to jump right in from there. Like I said, he's the co-founder and CEO of Mixcloud, an internet music platform that enables millions of creators from around the globe to legally stream music, generate income, and get closer to their fans. So you guys know how I feel about that because you guys put out incredible content, and it's having that relationship directly with the people that you impact. He was selected as a young advisor to the EU Commission Vice President of the Digital Agenda for Europe, and has mentored for the Founder Institute Incubator Program and is an advisor to various startups. And then prior to Mixcloud, Perez worked in renewable energy industry, helping design wind farms. So I'm sure we're gonna get into his background on how we ended up at Mixcloud, because I'm gonna make him do that. And he's spoken at the international conferences and events, including South by Southwest, UNESCO, Music Biz, San Francisco Music Tech, A3C, and more. And he graduated with a master's degree in aeronautical engineering from the University of Cambridge. So we've got such a diverse background, and I'm looking forward to connecting with you. Nico, thank you so much for being here.
Well, thank you very much for having me, Matt. It's exciting to be on the podcast.
Absolutely. I'm so grateful we got to connect too a little bit beforehand. This is a very unique background, and then to end up where you are with music. And I think it serves as such a beautiful, I know we're going to hear the whole journey, but I think it's such a beautiful, probably full circle if I'm guessing right. But for anybody else watching, like, hey, you can be more than one thing and you can start here and end up over here. And I think that's so important for people to realize that. But we always start with rapid fire questions, and it's always so much fun to see how all of you guys answer these. So if you're ready, we're going to dive right into those.
Let's do it.
All right. Okay. This is probably my favorite question. If the world was about to wipe away music for good, there was this Armageddon, and music was like the first thing to go, and you could only save 3 albums to listen to for the rest of your life, what would those 3 albums be?
I think it's a great question because I think albums are somewhat of a lost art, or I feel like I don't listen to that many albums that much anymore, but I think the 3 for me would kind of represent sort of different sides of my personality and maybe different genres of music that I've kind of loved over the years. And so I think first and foremost would have to be the hip hop category. And in that, Nas's Illmatic is by far and away, for me, the best debut album ever. Like probably one of the best albums ever, lyrically, instrumentally, the beats, the production, everything is it's just incredible. So Nas-O-Matic would be up there number one. Chemical Brothers,
Oof.
switching lanes a little bit. Chemical Brothers, there's an album called Dig Your Own Hole, which had tracks like Block Rockin' Beats and things like that on it. That was a pretty formative album for me, just in terms of like discovering dance music and electronic music. You know, I sort of grew up in my teenage years listening to a lot of hip hop, but then I sort of discovered dance and electronic music, and the album is just, you know, the level of production there, the way it just grabs you is just amazing. So Chemical Brothers, Dig Your Own Hole, number two. And then I think the third, again, switching lanes a little bit, but still in the electronic genre, but kind of lower tempo, would have to be Boards of Canada. Music Has the Right to Children. Incredible kind of ambient, more, you know, lower tempo, more ambient sounds. But again, the production quality, you know, the way that they would use kind of samples and loops, and just like it felt like there was graininess to every single song in a good way. Like it felt very, very real, very textured. And yeah, definitely, you know, not an album to put on like before you're going to go out, but an album to put on maybe like Sunday afternoon when you're just chilling at home, want to relax. So yeah, I think those would be my three.
Oof. First of all, I definitely relate to you about, I started with a lot of R&B, neo soul because of my household, and moved into hip hop, and then it switched to not switched. I got introduced to electronic as well, like my late teens, and I'm like, oh, and it was cool to start diversifying. So I totally felt you when you said that. And then of course, I mean, Nas-O-Matic, you're the first person to bring up Nas, not the first for hip hop. There's been a few, you know, with your Lauryn Hills and Biggie and whatnot, but Nas, oh God, it's like one of the greatest albums of all time. So I really felt that.
I'm super curious. Is there an album that kind of keeps coming up again and again? Is there one that people keep mentioning a lot?
So far, I think Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation, right? I think that came up either 2 or 3 times. I know for sure twice. I'd have to go back and watch the other like 11, 10 episodes, but yeah, so it keeps coming up. Prince came up twice, and I
different albums though.
Yes, and yeah, I think that's it. So I think it's been Lauryn Hill has got the top spot for most mentions. I feel like over time Nas will probably take that at some point, but I think you can't go wrong with any of these really. So yeah. Now, here's a interesting question that I sometimes related to number one because sometimes they do cross over. Name an influential person, living or non-living. I mean, and you can go as far back like if you wanted to do like Leonardo da Vinci or or Einstein, whatever you want. But somebody living or non-living that if you could interact with them and speak to them for one night, who would they be?
So, I think considering everything that's going on right now, so we're recording this in May 2021, and we were just talking pre the podcast about crypto and everything. I think if I could ever meet Satoshi Nakamoto, who's the guy who, or girl, or might actually even be multiple people we don't know, who came up with the original Bitcoin protocol.
Yep.
I think that would be an incredible person to meet, and just so curious. Like they've remained completely anonymous and forever, and we don't know who they are.
No, and then I saw that recent like on the top 10 of like wealth or something like that in the world or something like that. Nobody knows who Satoshi is. And
that person or persons has had probably more impact.
Yeah.
And I think we're still at the very early stages of impact that is going to have on the world. So, yeah.
That's a good one.
To meet them.
I haven't heard that, and I'm there with you. I would be so and the mindset of especially those that really understand Bitcoin and blockchain as a coding protocol is phenomenal at what it does and how it really assists in Web3 and really for in a lot of ways for us as we move forward. It's phenomenal. So like I can only imagine the conversation wouldn't just be technical. It would be also very metaphysical and universal and things like that.
Yeah, and philosophical as well.
Exactly.
Because I'm not sure how many people know the kind of origin, in the initial block of the Bitcoin blockchain. There's kind of a reference to, I think it's the UK Treasury increasing the money supply and inflation and things like that. And so this kind of whole thing, it seems like, it may not be true, but it seems like it's kind of a reaction to that, and central banks and centralized systems, and that introducing decentralized systems and kind of all these sort of things that will go on to like redefine what people are now calling Web3 and things like that. So yeah, I think it's a really, really interesting topic and kind of touches on so many different things.
Oh man, we can go on a tear for that. You're absolutely, and I think people are just now realizing that decentralization is just a beautiful way of saying, like, look, you can own your output, and there's freedom to create and have more ownership over that creativity, and kind of redistribute the way we distribute. So it's just a fascinating time, and how like the node networks work, and and account for you can't game the system. So like,
it's all there, it's all in the blockchain, it's transparent,
right,
clear, like
so incredible. Well, okay, so question number 3, in your opinion, what's the best music focused film of all time? Now this can be like fiction, documentary, rockumentary, series, film. It doesn't matter. Just something that's music related in some way.
What did they call Spinal Tap again? Was it like
right.
a mockumentary?
So good. I've seen it once, and it was hilarious. So
I would say this is a tough one. Like I would say Spinal Tap. There is a documentary about Bob Dylan called No Direction Home, which is really good. Highly recommend that if you like folk music, if you like just kind of insight into like the 1960s and 70s and what was going on, and that transition when he went from folk to starting to use electric guitars and things like that. So, and it's just I think it's Martin Scorsese who directed it, but the kind of the way it's put together and the way they kind of weave in the music, it just kind of takes you back to that place and time. So I think that's probably what I'd say. Although I gotta say, like, there's a close second. Recently, my friend put me onto this film filmed in Mexico called Ya no estoy aquí, I'm no longer here. And it's about a kind of subculture that kind of grew up in Monterrey in North Mexico around cumbia music, which originally is from northern Colombia, from the Caribbean coast in Colombia, but somehow over the years kind of made its way to Mexico and to this town of Monterrey. But they slowed it down. It's already not very fast music, but they slowed it down. They call it cumbia rebajada. And it's a kind of film. It's not a documentary. It's a kind of fictional film, but it's a story of kind of these young kids growing up in this like really difficult environment with gangs and everything everywhere. But they were so passionate about this music, and they just kind of loved dancing to this music, and created this kind of whole subculture, crazy outfits and style and everything. So if you're curious, I definitely recommend that. I think that one's on Netflix.
Cool.
Ya no estoy aquí.
Ya no estoy aquí. Nice. I actually made a note of it. Perfect. I'm gonna actually have to look that up. Yeah. I was gonna say, because cumbia did come from South America, from Colombia, right? And so it'd be interesting to see how they slowed that down even more, and then also just like you said, create a culture around it. I love when that when you see kind of people take an art and rethink its expression, so
totally. I mean, it reminded me a lot of like, I've seen these videos and photos of like the early days of hip hop, like the 1980s, when people would wear like Cazal sunglasses and like crazy fresh Adidas sneakers and like all these outfits and colors, and everything would be color coordinated and stuff like that. It just reminded me, it had that kind of like energy to it and vibe to it.
That's awesome. I'm going to definitely check it out. Okay, so question for the final question. What is an important book, podcast, platform, like, when I say platform, like YouTube, Audible, something, anything, Mixcloud, that has helped you navigate your creativity and passion, something that's really inspired you, that keeps you channeling that creativity and that
Yeah.
passion?
I've been thinking about books recently that I've
Mm-hmm.
read, and it's kind of, I've read a few kind of like quote unquote business books, but I've never really kind of found them. I don't know. They just, for one reason or another, they've
I
never
know.
worked that much for me. Like there's bits in there that are good, but never really hold my attention that much. But there was a book that I read called Slaughterhouse-Five by a guy named Kurt
Vonnegut.
Vonnegut.
Yep.
Yeah, who I think he must have written it in the like 50s or 60s or something like that. Again, it's a story of like these guys in the Second World War in Germany, but there's also like surreal elements that come into play and aliens and time travel and that sort of surreal sci-fi elements to it. But I think more than anything, there was a kind of like a mood and a kind of tone to it about kind of going with the flow and kind of like, just making the best of a situation. And I think that, we spoke about this briefly also before the podcast about how like with the pandemic, I think it's been a really difficult time, right? But I think if you can, where possible, kind of keep moving, keep building, maybe you have to kind of iterate, change direction a little bit, but like not get stuck wherever possible and just go with the flow and keep moving. I think that there was something about the kind of philosophy or mood or tone of that book that really stuck with me in that way.
And life's journey is definitely one long iteration.
Yeah.
So iteration after iteration after iteration of rinse and repeat, try again, edit, tweak, so
Yeah.
I read Slaughterhouse-Five many, many years ago, and I can't remember the background of it. And but I remember actually in grade school, it was in one of the advanced programs, and they're like, summer reading list, read this. And it was like, I think it was 18 or 19, 18, 17, something like that. And you make me just want to now revisit. I was actually just Googling it again. And I mean, I remember Kurt Vonnegut as a writer as well, too, not while he was living, just saying. But yeah, incredible. So thank you for sharing that. So before we start talking a lot more about audio culture and creative culture and all that's really happening right now, and it can clearly tell that you also intertwine a little bit of blockchain and knowing that this tech world that we're living and moving further into. How do we get here? Because when I'm reading your background and a master's degree in aeronautical engineering, which is awesome, at University of Cambridge, and then you worked in renewable energy, and here we are at Mixcloud, and Mixcloud's doing amazing. Like, how do we get here? You can go as far back as you want.
Yeah. I mean, I guess maybe go back to like being a teenager, kind of being in high school, thinking about like college, and like I was pretty good at maths and physics. And so I thought, you know what, I'm going to study engineering. And I really, really liked airplanes. And I was always fascinated by like airplanes, the way they fly, the way they're shaped, everything about them. And so I specialized in aeronautical engineering. And at college at the same time, this is kind of where the Mixcloud story starts. I became friends with a lot of people who were basically hip hop fans. And we started a little like hip hop crew together. A couple of us were DJs, break dancers, did a little bit of graffiti. Like it was basically a hip hop crew. And we had a radio show in college. We had a college radio show called The Get Down Show, actually inspired by Nas's track called The Get Down, which I'll loop back to in a little bit. So just remember that. And post graduating from college, we kind of all went our separate ways. I thought about kind of going into using my aeronautical engineering, kind of building planes and things like that. And I actually did short while work on airplane engines, but I was really interested in this idea of like renewable energy as a kind of, I think we're going to need it. I think we absolutely do need it. I think it's really important for the planet. I think that there's so much energy that we get from the sun or the wind. And so I decided to, go into that. And what I found though is that kind of like what I thought it was and what it actually wasn't actually totally the same thing. And so most of my day was just spent like in Excel spreadsheets, kind of doing lots of calculations. And that's all right. And it's it was interesting enough at the start, but I was also spending a lot of time trying to, because I was just like doing calculations, trying to find DJ mixes, trying to find radio shows, because that was my other passion. That was my, music is like a huge passion. It's my first love. And it was like, I just always found doing Excel spreadsheets or any type of work like that kind of boring if there wasn't good music playing in the background, right? So this is kind of the mid 2000s. And I remember calling up one of my buddies from college radio show. I was like, it's really frustrating because it's like really hard to find good DJ mixes, good radio shows on the internet. And he was like, yeah, I know. Like I just made this mix the other day and I wasn't sure where to put it. And I used it was mega upload file share or something like that.
Right.
And there was nowhere where you could put it, or you could put something legally, easily, or people could comment on it, you could share it, they could follow you. Like none of that really existed. None of that existed. And so your options were like mega upload file share, or a few people were kind of using the iTunes podcast directory, but it's not really licensed for music and still isn't. So that was kind of this light bulb moment, this realization that like, well, why don't we just build a platform for this? And I think maybe somewhat naively, we didn't realize how complex music copyright is. And that's, a whole thing we can talk about if you want to get into it. It's kind of become our speciality. But the genesis of the idea, the genesis of Mixcloud as an idea was just a kind of personal frustration around not only discovering new music through DJs and radio presenters, but also kind of putting it out there and having a platform to legally put it out there. So we were kind of solving our own personal frustrations and wanting to build something. And that was the start of the journey, really.
Interesting. Thank you for being my soul brother. I remember thinking so my first startup, and it was a really an epic, I don't want to call it failure because I like the word, I like figuring out what works and doesn't work, but we saw how artists around the world wanted to connect with each other and share and be able to connect with their audience, but they also wanted to connect with each other. And we're like, wouldn't it be cool? And this is kind of as MySpace was emerging. We're like, wouldn't it be cool if artists could like have like individual pages that they can upload their music, but then like also list off like things that they look for in other musicians, so if they ever want to like collaborate, and then also they can, charge for their music to the general public as well, and show collaborations between other musicians, and but to your point, there was a lot we didn't know. and in the early, when you're talking about 2002, 2003, 2004 and 5, it is not like the coding you have today. That's number one. And then copyright issues and rights and publishing and distribution and masters and everything else you could think of. But it was to solve this problem of like, because we were on like Mega Upload and LimeWire and Frostwire and Napster, and it's like, you're saving all this music, but like, how do you better find undiscovered talent? Because we would also try to find the new mixes that were coming out so fast, right? And interact with those artists. So that's incredible. That's why I said Soul Brother. I'm like, oh, only you're still here going. You guys kept tweaking and refining, and instead I went in a different digital path. But what happened after that? Like how did it continue to grow, like or evolve now that you're figuring out, okay, music copyright's a little complex, and coding when you guys first started is way different than coding is now. Like, what were some of the things that you started to realize and make pivots on?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess pretty early on we were fortunate to have like a friendship group and a network, mostly so we started out in London, in the UK, and we had a friendship group and a network a lot of people were DJs or throwing parties or events or festivals or things like that. So it spread pretty quickly in the early days, which I think is super helpful. Anybody who's like thinking of starting a company or starting a business, like if you can build that network and kind of seed something with that network, I highly recommend it. And then, we kind of grew it one step at a time, really. Like first it was the website. Then around, maybe a year or two after iPhone launch, we kind of had an iPhone app. Then we had the Android app, mobile website, Sonos, CarPlay, Google Chrome. Like, we just kind of started to layer in kind of different distribution platforms, all while kind of like building up these tools for DJs, radio presenters, and audio creators to kind of host their content and get it out there as widely as possible. So like integrations with Twitter, integrations with Facebook, trying to just help them get things as wide as possible. And that was kind of like the majority of what we did up till last year. And then last year, when the pandemic started to like get on people's radars and sort of Jan Feb, more and more of our community, we have 1.5 million people who've uploaded as creators to the platform, and more people from the community kind of were writing into us and saying like, "Hey, does Mixcloud have any live streaming? Like, I'm thinking of live stream. I want to do live streaming." And so we kind of knew at that point, because we talked about it for a long time. There was always one of the potential 10,000 things that we could do, but that was the moment where we were like, okay, we got to go for this. And we did a hack week. We kind of built the first version in like 3 weeks, got it out there, started testing it. And again, it just grew like wildfire. It was just so quick and people just started adopting it. And so we knew we were onto something there. And so today where we are is like, you can live stream, you can save a recording of your live stream, or you can upload a piece of audio, all of it legal, all of it licensed, and you can turn on monetization on your channel. And your fans, if they want to, they can support and subscribe to your channel. You can make things exclusive, things like that. So it's the full package now.
That's incredible. And it's not that surprising, because how you started off is how you've grown the platform the entire way. You had a community and a network in the beginning. Here's an immediate need we need to fulfill. We fulfill that one and we're focused. Now that we've fulfilled that one, the network and the community will tell us what to do. It's very lean startup, iterative thinking, right? It's like, okay, what do you guys need now? Well, it'd be great if we had this. Oh, okay. Let's layer this in. Let's layer this in. Let's layer this in. And all the way even till last year where, okay, new feature needed. We need live streaming, obviously. And it's cool because it allows you to be dialed in, focused based on exactly what the users need in any given moment. And like you said, you did a hack week and built the first version and you got out there and it grew like wildfire. Well, again, you listen directly to your audience. Like, is that what you guys need? Okay, we'll get on it right now and we'll make it happen. And then you guys will test it and let us know how we can keep optimizing it. So yeah, you're going to be successful doing that, but not because it's like, you get a lot of times people are like, oh, how'd you know? It's like, well, because we listen to we're a network, we're a whole, movement, so.
Yeah, I definitely if anybody's building like a web-based product or a startup or something like that, I highly recommend just talking to your users, listen to them.
Yes.
Only caveat I would say is like, they're probably thinking about like the next adjacent thing.
Yes.
And you as a founder, you also want to be thinking, okay, what's next adjacent, but also what's like 5 steps down the road. And like, because they won't be in that kind of mindset. They'll be thinking like next adjacent thing, which is helpful and useful to think about and build. But you also want to keep in mind, like, okay, where's like 5 steps down.
Yes. I think it was Henry Ford said something like, if I had asked the public what they wanted, they would have said more horses. you know? And his thing was like, and I get it. There's this balance between, we always want to listen to our customers, but we want to be innovative in our approach and be thinking about all of the other things that intertwine with it. So it's like, oh, they wanted more horses. They wanted to go faster. I need to innovate a faster engine. Got it. Versus, oh, I'll give you horses. So there's that kind of, that short-term fix versus a long-term, like thinking about all the different, steps ahead that are going to lead into, how you can also innately solve a problem innovative wise. Right. So, yeah. And then now, what are you noticing as from whether it's from an empowerment standpoint or, this audio culture, as I was saying in the beginning, audio culture, or this creator culture, are they more empowered more than ever because they want to do the art and they have the tools to manage it, distribute it, and run it like a business? Is that how they're feeling, and they're feeling even more empowered? Like, what are you noticing along the way that has really kind of changed the game for a lot of DJs and musicians?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing that we've definitely noticed, and I think this ties into the importance that we put on getting licenses and having a legal platform, is that people are becoming more and more aware of why a license, or if you're playing other people's copyrighted music, why it's important that the platform has those licenses in place. So just to give you a couple examples, a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic, like D-Nice and DJs like that, they started streaming live on Instagram. And within a month or two, Instagram started shutting those down. Similar on Facebook, they started streaming live, started getting shut down. Similar story happened with SoundCloud, kind of a little bit earlier in the sort of 2015, 2016 sort of era, where people were uploading things. SoundCloud didn't yet have licenses, and they were getting takedowns. And so I think that awareness is starting to grow. People are starting to become more and more aware of that. And at the same time, I think creators who are actually like making music are becoming more and more aware of the different options that are out there for them. So what I mean by that is, like, whereas maybe 10, 15 years ago, pretty much everybody who wanted to build a career as an artist or musician in music, they would try and get signed to a label. And in that process, you sign away your rights to your music, and you have no control over it at that point. The label owns it and they have control over it. But they give you a big check up front. So it's that trade-off.
Yes.
But I think that more and more artists are starting to like just weigh up that trade-off a little bit more. And because there's these new technology platforms and new ways of like communicating and distributing, what we're finding is people are starting to think about that trade-off. And maybe if it was like 99-1 before, maybe now it's like 80-20, kind of different approaches. So yeah, so I think that's another kind of major thread that's happening. I think, just to finish off that point, I think that's something that we're starting to see across the different kind of media formats, right? Yes. So you've got like Substack that is kind of helping writers kind of build their own audiences and kind of generate income from their passion. You've got Patreon that does it for a lot of like YouTube video bloggers and people like that. All these different platforms for these different verticals. And so a lot of what we're thinking about in music is like, how do we help people do that in music?
I'll be sure to put you on my Substack. It's free. But I'll be sure to put you on my Substack. But there's a lot of really great points that you said in there, which is, I think you have the big platforms like you mentioned, with Instagram and Facebook, and saying, hey, we have licensing issues, so we're not going to do that. But it showed an innate need in the marketplace of, look, I'm the source, and I want to directly connect to the people. And I feel like years ago, a lot of people had no other option but to say, oh, I need the label for that distribution. And I saw it coming with Napster. I don't know how they didn't see it sooner. You clearly did. I didn't think maybe they did see it. They just didn't want to see it. But I mean, the general public, a lot of the artists, I was surprised. I was like, listen, like, you guys like realize with the internet what you can do, right? I mean, the cost in the middle,
Yeah.
your operational costs and your come down, your packaging costs come down. But I get it. It was also ahead of time thinking, because you still have to create the logistics to make the artist be able to distribute the art in a very seamless manner, and to run it like a business, and all the other like behind the scenes things that people don't take into consideration. But I'd like to think it's even I'm hoping for more than 80-20. I'm hoping it eventually reverses to 1-99. Like, who's going to sign to there's nothing wrong with labels. I just think that labels can I have to like backtrack that for a second. Like, I just think that labels have this beautiful role to like reimagine the possibilities, and take care of the artist in such a beautiful way. I've always felt that since the very beginning. Like, wow, like, with technology, you can actually run your label even more cost effectively and more calculated and help the artist out. And that's why I feel like platforms like Mixcloud, now you look at it and like, that's how you do it. You know what I mean? So,
and I think the smart labels are starting to clock onto that.
Yes.
And they're talking about things like artist services, and like, now that every artist has, an infinite distribution channel, and the cost of production have fallen to like the cost of a laptop, and okay, maybe you need some synths and some gear and stuff, but it's not crazy. That also means that we have gone from like, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands of creators in the 80s and 90s to like millions of people creating music now, right? And so you have a new element at play, which is the kind of like people's attentions, and you have limited attention. There's a limited number of hours in the day where you can listen to music, right? So how do you then get your music in front of other people? That's, I think, where some of the new kind of labels are thinking about it in a smart way. Like, how do we help this artist kind of gain more exposure, maybe get on the radio, get in the playlist, that sort of thing.
And I think that's where it gets really exciting. I want to start to transition a little bit here, because this is going to lead into two things, and you brought it up earlier, and I want to see. So we'll start with copyright issues. Let's talk about digital and music and copyright. And you may even answer my second question, which I won't bring up just yet based on where we're heading. But I would love for you to talk about like what have been some of the issues that you've dealt with over time, and what are the issues in general that have to be taken into consideration when it comes to copyright.
Yeah, so crash course in copyright in 2 minutes.
Yes.
Every single song has 2 pieces of intellectual property in it. It has a master sound recording, which is usually what the labels own. When you sign to a label, they're saying, I'm going to pay you X to own your master sound recordings. And it's when you actually record the song. That's one side. The other side is the musical work, also sometimes called the musical composition. That's the lyrics, the notes, the kind of, underlying song, usually put together by songwriters. It can sometimes be the same person, but that part is usually either owned or administered by music publishers. So examples being Sony ATV, Warner Chappell, a few others. Wow. Each of those 2 pieces of intellectual property is licensed in different ways. It's licensed by different entities and different bodies in different countries. And so if you think about the number of songs out there, multiply that by 2 is the number of pieces of intellectual property. Multiply that by 180 is the number of countries in the world. Multiply that by some of those musical compositions have multiple songwriters who are represented by different musical publishers. You can start to see very quickly how the level of complexity just goes and goes and goes, and nobody has a definitive picture or database of who owns what. And so everybody is always trying to figure it out, and we're always trying to figure it out. And that's a lot of what we've built over the years, is this technology stack that powers the licenses that we have to figure out, when you play that song by Kanye West or whoever it is, who are actually the label owners and the underlying songwriters, and how do we make sure that they get paid when that track gets streamed in Belgium? That's the kind of
wow,
the difficult stuff that we have to figure out, and has taken us 10 years to really build all the systems and processes to do that.
Only 10 years? Wow. I mean, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. And it makes sense because I was taking notes of what you were saying, like licensed in different ways, in different entities, in different countries, over 180 countries. When does it actually stream within that country? And all of the people that have to get paid in the mix of that, it almost, I can see why artists have been struggling, like really struggling.
This is why, like,
Wow.
Instagram, Facebook, these platforms, they don't really want to have to figure out this stuff. It's pretty complicated. It's not and the truth is, like, DJs and radio presenters and podcasters and stuff, we think of it as like a big world for us. It's like, it's our world. It's what we live in and what we do every day. But for these platforms that reach billions of people, it's kind of like they just don't want the hassle of having to figure that stuff out. So that's where Mixcloud comes in.
Yeah, I realized early on in podcasting, if you have certain music, you can't then be on like SoundCloud and other platforms. That's how I learned that. Like, unless you have ownership or been given granted rights and things like that. I'm like, oh, I hadn't thought about that.
Yeah.
So seeing things like that. All right, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, if you want to do a podcast with music, if you're listening to this, you want to do a podcast with music, we can do that legally and licensed. So
good to know. Good to know. Luckily now everything I do is with permission. I also notice in the reverse, because I trademark like everything that I do. Like before I even launch, I'm like, I call my lawyer. I was like, hey, listen, I want to trademark this. He's like, all right, is it up yet? I'm like, it will be. Just tell me. And I remember trademarking the other podcast. And I remember, to your point about platforms, I remember, I won't say, I don't really know their names, but like I remember people were using that name and they had substantial influence and they had been on public shows and radio and all this other stuff, but they had used my name, which had already had like 100 plus episodes and was federally trademarked. And the moment I contacted YouTube and Apple, down. It was down. Like there wasn't even like a, there wasn't a fight. It was like, yep, no problem, click. I was like, wow, because I get it. It's a whole other world that they don't want to deal with. Plus, it's a federal trademark. It's like, you're talking about names, you're talking about, brands, music, you're talking about content, all this stuff. They're just like, we don't have time for this, click. So,
yeah.
It showed me how, there's a lot of things that you have to deal with in general that, sometimes we don't take into consideration. But to your point, to us as the creators, the world is our oyster, and in distribution, like, you mean I just have to create my audience? Done, I got this, but there are some things to take into consideration along the way. So this is going to lead to my second question, and then I do want to circle back onto Mixcloud and how you guys are set up. But what about the future of copyright, given what we talked about at the beginning of the show, blockchain, what we are seeing with the power of NFTs? It was great to see people like Grimes and, I'm watching my favorite producer, Illmind, although Illmind owns all of his masters anyway, so it's a little bit different with him. I'd be curious, with somebody like Russ, although Illmind and Russ are actually doing something right now, and I'm bouncing around a little bit, but like just this idea of copyright control, because blockchain and NFTs, the utility of it allows you to trace back not just ownership rights, but I would think streaming as well too, because blockchain is like that, right?
Yeah, totally. So if you cast your mind back to what I said a couple minutes ago when I was talking about there being no complete database or no full picture of who owns what, there's a potential here that blockchain could start to solve that problem.
Yes.
Now, I think we're still early days. I think NFTs it's a fun, like, new use case for it, but I think it's potentially the foot in the door.
Yes.
To like people start to understand this technology and what it's capable of.
Yes.
So I'm hopeful. I think that would be net positive for all artists, music creators, songwriters, everybody. I'm hoping that this kind of opens the door to the power of the blockchain technology, what it can do, just in terms of tracking who owns what, being able to easily know, okay, that song was written by this person, and I have to pay that person in this country. All that stuff that I talked about, it could all be encoded in smart contracts within the blockchain. So, fingers crossed. We're a few years away from that. I think there will be a kind of a interesting kind of transition period where you have like this new music ecosystem over here that's like using that technology, the old music system over here that's not quite been, all that metadata of ownership and everything has not been integrated into it yet, but that can be figured out. If it's working, that can be figured out.
Yeah, it's exciting. It's definitely a very long game thinking, and you made a really great point. NFTs are just kind of the starting point to show a use case for utility. Yes, monetization. I know that everybody gets all, the media hypes with the headlines and stuff like that, but I get excited by the utility and the use case, because it's like, well, think about, the artist, not only can they distribute their music through smart contract, if they do want to give up part of their rights to the music as part of like as a fan, a super fan or something like that, if you want to be a part of the journey as me, the creator, and you want to own part of the work, like somebody who would buy like the Beatles works or something like that, like the way, Michael Jackson did back in the day or something like that, people now can be actively participate in that standpoint. And anytime the NFTs or the token of authentication is resold, the fact that licensing and royalties can be built into it, and tracked the entire time through smart contracts on the blockchain is like, it's incredible to think about the use case. But yes, I think we're still new. And what we know usually about technology is when power shifts happen, sometimes there's a little bit of a stalling, if you will, or it's not always. Sometimes it's met with a little bit of resistance, but I don't think you can stop it. That's the thing.
Yeah. What's that? I think it's called the Gartner hype cycle. I'm not sure if you've.
No, I haven't heard this.
There's this graph where, there's a kind of explosion of interest at the start, and then it kind of dies away. But then over time, it kind of grows back and grows even bigger. I think we're kind of with NFTs at the sort of explosion of interest point, and everybody's like talking about them. And my prediction, check back in a year, is that it's going to kind of cool off within a year's time. But then over kind of the following couple of years, the underlying technology there, the underlying concepts are going to be adopted more and more widely.
Absolutely. I was listening to Gary Vee the other day talking about that as he's getting ready to launch his, and he was saying, because he was interviewed, and he was saying like, oh, well NFTs, are we in a bubble? And he's like, look, he's like anything, he's like, there will always be an oversaturation in the market. But at the end of the day, the NFT's purpose will also serve, who are you willing to support, and where do you find value? And that is a longer use case, a longer, run mentality of like, oh no, this artist or this person or this content creator or this writer or this maker or whatever continuously gives me something of value that I love to be a part of and acquire, which has been proven, already in an Instagram world, in a TikTok world. So I agree with you. I think that after you get past the hype, you'll kind of see this shoo. It'll be like a bear market, just like it was like in 18 and 19 for crypto. Yeah. And then, and I always encourage people, use the time not to play to the hype, but to learn how to use the utility of it so you can involve your community, because blockchain is like the Token Economy book was a great book to talk about really it's community centric building. So, we got 5, 10, 20 years of this ahead of us, I think.
Yeah.
So.
I think that the people who are like doing the most interesting things here are thinking about it through the lens of community. So
yes,
there's some guys who are started something called Mirror.xyz.
Yes.
It's an interesting new platform. There's another one called Zora. I think it's Zora. There's a couple others out there, and they're often thinking about it through kind of the lens of community as well. So yeah, I think if I wasn't doing with Mixcloud, we actually do think about community a lot. We haven't incorporated any blockchain technology yet.
Yes.
But who knows if a lot of what we talked about in terms of kind of that musical ownership rights database stuff does evolve and get to a point where like it's very practically useful, I could totally see how powerful that could be. So
yeah, it's exciting. It's really exciting. Yeah, I was looking at mirror.xyz weeks back. I've been writing for 10 years, and it's interesting how they for anybody listening, that mirror.xyz is like it's a writing platform. It's more for like authors and writers and all that stuff. Fascinating how they, as a community though too, like each Wednesday you can like tune in, and then you can kind of put your name in the hat, and then you're on a list, and you're all like, I guess, having to get people to support you and like your writing and your work. I'm still trying to learn it because I wanted to jump on the platform, but it's like there's a process to go through. And then Zora, I think, does like a lot of stuff with like fashion. No, aren't they kind of trying to do a little bit with like fashion and other things? And yeah, it just,
I think so. Yeah.
yeah, I think so. So universe, don't hold me to that one, but it's and if you could see the amount of discords that I'm in, it's so fascinating to watch how the mind and the metaverse can think about it, applying utility and use case to artistry. It's an interesting time. What are you guys most excited for? Like, what do you have coming up with Mixcloud that you're most excited about?
Yeah, good question. Well, I mean, building on that topic of community and collaboration, we are kind of thinking about, okay, so we've built the kind of place where you can upload, the built place where you can live stream, but it's all kind of very solo, single person mode, to use a kind of gaming analogy. So we're thinking now about like, okay, well, what would it look like in a collaborative mode? Like, what would it look like if I could live stream with my friend who lives across the country, across the world, and we could collaborate on an event, or we could DJ together, or we could like pull up people from the audience, taking a bit of inspiration from what Clubhouse has been doing. So thinking about how do we build collaboration and community, I think that's like, hopefully see us announcing some stuff in the next few months around that space.
Count me in. I want front row. I want to come up to the panel and ask a question to the artist.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'd love to do like this sort of thing. Like, imagine you could do a podcast live, but then also somebody who's like a music producer could like play their music on the podcast and we walk through the production techniques. That sort of thing, where you can like just use it as a tool in so many different ways. So man, little sneak peek.
I'm excited. It's and it's cool because so many of these ideologies have been proven out when you think about like Twitch and Clubhouse and all these use cases where how you can connect people in different capacities and have them interact in a live format. It's exciting. There's so much you can do, especially when you got a community of like 1.5 million members and whatnot in your platform. So that's amazing. Where can everybody find out about you guys right now? If they're not going to connect with you, you of course you can obviously give if you want them to connect with you. Some people like that, some people don't. but most importantly, Mixcloud and everything that you guys are doing. Totally.
So the website's really easy, mixcloud.com, Mixcloud. We've got an about page with a little bit of info on us and things like that. If you want to hit me up personally, I'm on Twitter or Instagram at Nico Perez, NicoPerez. I also try and answer all the DMs, all the messages, everything like that. And if you're interested in kind of signing up as a creator, it's free to sign up. It's open. Anybody can sign up. If you want to have access to some of the more advanced tools, like the live streaming, like the turning on monetization, like scheduling uploads, extra stats, things like that, we do have a pro account. It's Mixcloud Pro account. It's about $15 a month. It gives you access to all of those things and more. More is coming. So check it out.
That's incredible pricing, by the way. $15 a month is incredible. Oh my God. This is why I constantly tell artists and creators in any kind of multi-discipline, or in discipline, I should say, not multi, but multi, like the tools are out there that allow us to have that those capabilities. Like, take a chance on yourself, build it the right way, and in the smart way. And you won't need to have millions and millions and millions of streams. You can actually do really cool, really good with like thousands, because you own it and you have direct access to your audience. And that's incredible. I looked at the site.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, go ahead, please.
And no, I was just gonna say, and if you have a loyal audience and you're kind of consistent, and like what you do and doing it every single week, and you have consistency, that just builds that loyalty up.
Oh yeah, we talk about the consistency often, and it was just somebody recently asked. They were like, how do you do this? I'm like, I'm on year 8. Let me tell you something. I'm like, there are definitely some weeks that are tiring, but when you, to your point earlier, when you tie it to like a passion, something just drives you at a different level, that you show up and you're like, yeah, I'm exhausted, but man, I'm addicted because I love doing what I do.
And the other thing I'd say is like it some things do take a bit of time.
Yes.
Like even with Mixcloud, the first 2-3 years, like we were working for nothing. Like we didn't take any salary, we didn't take anything. We're just like, sweating it out, and things take time. And you fast forward a few years from there, and eventually we raised some investment. We did a Series A fundraise. Actually, on that note, looping way back to the start, Naz actually invested in Mixcloud in our Series A fundraise.
Oh, come on!
So
I feel like I should know that.
That talking about full circle.
Wow!
And that album, we named our radio show, which we originally got to know each other and like had the genesis of the Mixcloud idea after a song by him, and then like more or less around 10 years later invested. So that was a pretty cool, like,
oh my god, that's incredible,
full circle moment. Yeah,
and he's on it when it comes to investing in tech, and I mean, Pluto TV and Coinbase.
Yeah.
I'm like, so good for you. Oh.
Yeah, so his manager is a guy called Anthony Soleil. He's on our board, and he's like super, super well networked and really knows the kind of like music space, but also the tech space. And
that's incredible.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's incredible. I mean, thank you for sharing all of this, and what you guys are doing is absolutely phenomenal and very much unique and needed. I mean, you're really helping push artist culture and audio culture forward, and it's been needing this for a long time. But at least what a time to be having what you do and have created in a time where the people really need it, the artists really need it more than ever, and they're feeling much more empowered and in control of what they're building, and they believe that they can do it. And now you're not holding them down, you're like raising them up. And I think that platforms like that are everything. Most people, they just want to own what they create, anything in this world, and be responsible for it. But sometimes the system hasn't always been created to do that for people. And it's like, just let the people build, let them do what they do,
Yeah. So. Yeah. And I think that, we always try and build creator first, and want to be as aligned as them. And so like, we only generate income if you're generating income on your channel, on your subscriptions. Like we want to make sure that all the creators are really growing and having the best experience on the platform. And I think if you think through that and like try and come at it kind of creator first, at least in our case, it just makes so much sense. And so if you're an artist or creator or podcaster, musician, thinking about what platforms to go through or use, definitely think through like which ones are thinking creator first.
That's a great piece of advice. And I've always said, you cannot go wrong taking care of the people. Like, I've even pitched that to old business models where they're, I'm like, listen, like, you can make even more money doing the right thing and taking care of the people more than you ever did, like conscious capitalism, if you will. It's like you can actually like put the people first in a sense of empowerment and give them the tools and rethink the business model where everybody wins, and it's sometimes they, I remember coming up, they'd be like, huh? Like, what? What? we'll lose control. I'm like, you don't have it anyways in the future. So you might as well, embrace and help. And so yeah,
There you go.
That's amazing. That's amazing advice to everybody listening. Think about any platform that puts creator first, creator centric and community first, and is really giving you the tools to actually like empower and push you forward, not necessarily keep you kind of, stuck in a in a loop, if you will. Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so
100%.
much for being on the show, and hang out for 1 second. We'll chat here offline. But for everybody listening, Nico Perez,
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. This is incredible,
Appreciate
man. I'm looking forward to many more conversations. Everybody listening, please go support Mixcloud. You can find, it's Mixcloud. You guys already know. But for those that are newer, at Mixcloud, mixcloud.com, at Nico Perez, go support, reach out if you have questions. That's exactly what they're here to do. These are the type of unconventional ways that we try to help give the tools for empowerment. So this is exactly like in alignment with our part of our mission. So just want to thank you guys all for tuning in to On Top of the Covers. It truly means so much to us and our movement, as you guys will always hear me say, as well as to the contribution of music culture. Like it's a bond that we all have, and it's only going to continue to expand, and we have to nurture and take care of it. Also want to thank you guys for giving us feedback and being part of this journey. Please continue to give us the 5-star reviews, and on Apple, that's what helps Apple discover us more as we continue to grow. And you can again follow us on all major platforms at We Are Orlove, or myself at Matt Gottesman on Insta. And then also subscribe to the Orlove YouTube channel for our weekly launches of the web series Under the Covers. We feature, undiscovered talent from around the world doing amazing cover songs, as well as today's footage. If you're listening to this on Apple or Spotify or iHeart or Google Play or radio.com or any other like 20 platforms, you can also watch this video on YouTube, and you can see us have this jam out and, and interact there as well. Maybe leave some comments on the wall. We'll get back to you. So appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you guys so much. And we're out.